They are no longer at the forefront. They are no longer able to present to us a vision of the future. And that is the biggest concern. With Jobs as its leader, Apple was able to behave like a startup for much longer than it should have been able to. That's because Steve Jobs did not tolerate lack of innovation, lack of progression, and he had very low tolerance for imperfection. Apple is presently in dire states in the realm of innovation because it has failed to be at the top of what is now the current trend, AI. Apple, a company that has previously been at the forefront of innovation, bringing obscure technology to the masses, it facilitated society's progression into accessing the internet via apps. What Apple's failed to recognize is how much investment they should have been putting into AI of their own. The iPhone now presents the peak of Apple innovation, and I say that in both a positive and negative light. Positive, of course, it's a great device, but also it's showing cracks because, let's face it, why should it be easier for me to access AI platforms on the computer than it is on the iPhone? Why are they relying on Google? Why are they considering OpenAI? It makes no sense because a company as huge as Apple should, if they had the foresight, have developed their own systems. But of course, it seems that they didn't. They didn't see it coming. Even DeepSeek has beaten Apple to developing an LLM. Unless there's a huge secret that there's just yet to announce, they seem to have missed the mark. So where does Apple go? What is left for Apple to achieve? Of course, it has billions to invest in research, and you would think research is the key to progression. But I disagree in some regards because what is needed is a vision, the vision of a leader who's able to see far ahead into the future, as Steve Jobs did when he predicted in the 80s or 90s that we would be having a conversation with Aristotle. He saw it back then, and we are here now. Who is the person inside Apple that is going to see where we are going to be in the next 5 to 10 years so that they can direct the company towards that? I don't think that person exists. I don't think Apple as a company have it in them to be able to adapt so rapidly to what is needed, to what humans, to what we need as a society. The next company that's going to become as big as Apple will be the one that recognizes and finds the way of allowing humans to access artificial intelligence in a way as easily as it was to access messaging and the internet with the iPhone. Presently, we're interacting with AI through chat platforms. That might be the way we continue to, but there is a gap, there is something missing in what is to come. And the company that identifies that will revolutionize technology, human interaction. What happens when a company becomes too large is that it becomes slower to adapt, simply because it's so dependent on income it brings in from their stable products. Unless you have someone visionary at the helm, companies will stagnate because they'll be so comfortable with the huge amounts of generated income. What Apple hasn't invented yet, and what it needs to, is the iPod of the AI revolution. What it needs is a device or a software that allows us to act intuitively with the vast array of tools that are now available in the AI space. Let's face it, they increase our productivity as humans, and we are not able to easily access them via our phones. The best we have is a chat interface on ChatGPT, or if we want to produce really good video, a third-party app that we have to pay a subscription for. Of course, it's partially in the benefit of Apple to have in-app purchase, but where the consumer is being failed, in a historical sense of where Apple once stood in the eyes of its loyal fans, is Apple's magic dust on a technology that allows the user to seamlessly, intuitively experience technology as if it were magic. So where is the direction that Apple may go from here? Because that's the biggest concern as a company. Is it really destined to be the Microsofts and IBMs of the next decade? The companies that succeeded all those years ago and now have stagnant products, but are so big and they produce an important product to really pivot into something new. And I'm afraid that Apple has become that. It is no longer the cult company, the company that was innovative, unique, and fresh that it used to be. It attracted a following not just because of great leadership, because great leadership had a message. At the core of Apple was a belief that human technology interface need not be obstructive. It should be conducive to human development. When we pick up an iPhone, everything is at our fingertips. We don't think of how complicated a task is going to be to perform. But dare I say, more and more, as you experience iOS and some of the apps that rely on iOS, you realize that things could be done easier because the ecosystem has become so complicated. Have Apple intentionally done this, made navigating menus and system settings so difficult intentionally? I don't know. Has Apple intentionally decided that it won't invest in its own LLMs, in its own AI structure? One of the great things about Apple in the past was that by owning their technology, it also owned the privacy. Now, whatever our views on privacy, the important thing is that the more companies that are allowed to access, the harder it is to control our data. Yes, of course, it could be considered interesting that one company primarily has a huge store of our own personal data, but also if you believe in that company's strength and position in making solid attempts to protect our privacy, that's a good system. But once you let third parties access private information, you start to wonder